Well, welcome. This is Rocky Romero with Peers on Demand, and it's my pleasure to be able to introduce to you George Sullivan of Net Zero Analysis. George, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Rocky, thank you for inviting me for the interview here today. I do appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. So let's just get started. I wonder if you could share a little bit about yourself and your business.
So my name is George Sullivan, and I'm the CEO of Net Zero Analysis and Design Corp. We're an ISO 14001 environmental management lead auditors. We specialize in doing all things carbon for all of our clients. So that could be environmental product disclosures for a product like the laptops we're on right now, or out to building or city scale projects. And we work primarily with any of the corporations that have to report their carbon footprint. For example, underneath the law that was passed by the California Assembly on Monday on reporting their scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. And then the upcoming SEC laws that are supposed to get announced, or regulations that are supposed to get announced in October. So we help clients currently in Asia Pacific, and also in the EU. And we have a number of multinational clients that we help report. So that's where we fall into that basis. This is my 5th startup. I've had 4 successful exits and looking to continue to grow.
Well, excellent. So you mentioned obviously companies that could use what you're doing, the compliance and carbon neutral. So I wonder if you could be more specific. In the US, who would be a client target that would receive the most tremendous value from working with you?
So let's just talk about regulatory impact, right? That's the big piece right now, is that the US currently does not have a regulatory requirement for carbon reporting. The SEC is supposed to announce one. Monday, California's state legislature passed a law requiring all companies doing business in California to actually report their scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. And so that has a very time frame on it. We're waiting for the final legislation to get signed by the governor in mid-October. And the SEC stuff will be out in mid-October also, but it's going to be rather interesting to see how both of them tie together. So real estate overall is 51 to 55% of the global emissions. So our real estate clients get the most amount of value out of us because we not only do the measurement, we do verification and validation of that measurement for their investors, reporting, and all the rest of that. So we de-risk or take on the risk of doing that measurement as a third party. And then there's attestation, and we actually will refer to an attestation, a regulated attestation body, which is another ISO 14001 lead auditor that will actually review all of our work and then issue a attestation letter, right? That is then published on their website, goes in the annual report. So think about financial reporting and how stringent the rules are there. Carbon reporting is the same way. So financial reporting, it's all done on spreadsheets, things of that nature. All the data's got to be pulled. You got to review all the data down to, the invoices, if you will, and utility bills, things of that nature. But everything has a carbon footprint. So we get into doing that. Then we work with the clients on developing a reduction strategy, right, to reduce their carbon footprint. If they're building new products, we'll help with developing the environmental product disclosure. Or if they've got an existing product, we can actually get and do an EPD for that, bring it up to date. So EPDs are good for 5 years, roughly. EPA has already said that you have to have an EPD 3, Environmental Product Disclosure 3, and it's ISO only. So all of the regulatory pieces are falling together for us as a company. So they get tremendous value out of the fact that we are de-risking all of this. And when it comes down to attestation and we're doing the verification validation, there are two pieces that we look at: reasonable assurance and limited assurance. And we are Sarbanes-Oxley compliant with our audits. So SOX compliance for short. So when we do those audits, everything is auditable. We work with their internal audit team. We work with the sustainability or EH&S team. We work with IT. We work with senior management. So it's across all lines. Operations, the whole shot, because it truly is everybody in that value chain.
Well, de-risking is a new word in my vocabulary. So I wonder if you could be more specific in terms of the risk that companies are taking. I know that Google's was fined a tremendous amount of money. So what kind of risk are companies subject to? And what is an example of maybe a company that you worked with that you took the risk away from?
So let's just talk about that for a second. There's two primary risks in doing your reporting, right? One is physical risk due to climate change, sea level rise, things of that nature, major storms. We're seeing all of that now, right? Flooding, all of that. That's a set of models that you have to run a particular asset through to determine those risks, right? That's physical risk. And then which we do that also, but we also do transition risk. Transition risk is the actual compliance to a regulation. So we're seeing companies out there that are using the green building rating systems, for example, making claims of green buildings, making claims of carbon neutrality, making claims of better for the planet, making claims of a whole bunch of stuff. Those are transition risks. And if you look at the Federal Communications Commission, right, the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, and their green guides, you'll find that the FTC is actually suing companies over those claims. So that's a big transition risk. The SEC actually gets involved with regulated companies, that public stock companies or over-the-counter stock companies that are actually making claims also. There was just another big one, another major real estate home builder went through a major investigation, and their CEO was indicted for fraud. So those are the risks that we're talking about. Right? We eliminate those risks because we will advise against making any sort of claim except what you can back up. And that's all based on the data and the calculations, which we actually do. And then how it's reported. We overview the reports. We actually help the clients through this. And then when we lay out the reduction plan, we're measuring their footprint to that reduction. But if you're growing and adding things, that's going to increase your carbon footprint. So we're seeing a whole market transition happening just within the marketplace itself. Of when a company buys another company, they're asking, what is your climate reporting? Because it's just as important as your financial reporting. Making claims and you don't have your climate reporting together, there's a huge red herring here that I'm going to have to, if I'm buying you or investing in you or buying your stock or buying your product, that I might end up having to eat at a later date. So think about a home builder. If he's buying manufactured siding from somebody and they're claiming that it's carbon neutral. Well, I'm buying it because I want my project to be carbon neutral. I don't have a clue on how to do that. I'm relying on all my supply chain to say my product's carbon neutral, and that's the way I'm selecting it. But yet I get tapped on the shoulder as being the builder and say, show us your carbon neutrality certificates, show us how you calculated this. And then all of a sudden, now you're on the hook.
So somebody could stand to generate revenue by being compliant, but they could also be penalized. Can you translate into dollars? Because that's how we measure. What
Sure.
kind of dollars are we talking about?
You're talking millions of dollars in fines, jail time for chief executive officers, right? People that sign off on the dotted line on this. There's a ton of fines that people, well, back to the home builder that I'm citing, they actually got, the CEO got indicted for manipulating the housing price by making claims of Energy Star, carbon neutrality, zero emissions, all the rest of this, and was selling the houses at a well above market price. And so the indictment came down on that he was manipulating the housing price to game the system, and he didn't have any of the information, didn't have any of the certifications, didn't have any of the calculations behind them. So that's where we de-risk all of that. If somebody shows up at the door, you hand them the report, you hand them our verification validation reports, and say, talk to these guys. They did the audits, they did all the rest of this, and we're doing that, right? We actually will be able to sit down and say, we did it to ISO. ISO is the selected by EPA requirement to do the measurement. Here's our EPDs. Here's how they were calculated. Here's all the rest of the stuff that goes behind it. And oh, by the way, here's the third party disinterested that did the attestation. Here's where we filed these that we got approval on. So we took care of all of that for them for a fee versus how much money are you throwing at your legal team? How much money are you throwing at all the rest of this? So that's where all of that comes into place. So it's hundreds of millions of dollars in fines.
That is huge. Yeah, that'll get businesses' attention, small, medium, and large sized businesses. So George, I'm wondering if somebody wanted to reach you and get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to connect or contact you?
So there's a couple of ways to do that. One is through our website, and we're actually in the process of updating the website right now, but through info@netzeroanalysis.com is an email address, or my personal email address with the company, which is gds@netzeroanalysis.com. To get a hold of me, the quickest route possible is by email, and or you can reach out to me by cell phone. I'm not guaranteeing that I'll be able to answer the call, but it's 773-230-4462. And our website address is www.netzeroanalysis.com. So, and stay tuned to the website. It's going to be rather informative, but it's going to help walk you through. So if you're doing corporate GHG right now, we can transition that to ISO and get you back into compliance with what the EPA requirements are, or what they've identified them as will be enacted very shortly. So that's where that's at. We also do emissions reporting for air emissions. We do a whole bunch of carbon reporting for various industries, oil and gas, pharma, food, right, agriculture. So not just real estate, but we cross all sectors.